The only thing better than the Spiro Avenue show is the Spiro Avenue show 2 times in 2 nights, and that is what we are delivering to you. I am Justin Spiro. I'm happy to have you back. We had a rollicking episode with my good friend Scott Anderson. Not that one, not the one a lot of you know, but my buddy Scott Anderson yesterday talking about a whole smorgasbord of topics. We had the Lions, we had a little dose of the Pistons, we had a lot of Tigers. It was all over the map, and it was a lot of fun. And as much as I love Scott, he's a sharp guy, one of my smartest sports fan friends. He doesn't quite have the credentials, the working credentials, of the man that sits across from me right now. He is new on the scene, a Chippewa like I was one time before the transfer to Michigan State. Evan Petzold of the Detroit Free Press, Detroit Tigers beat writer, making his Spiro Avenue debut. Many of your friends have been in here before. I know you're a huge fan of the show, but now you're here, and welcome to you.
Yeah, you've had quite a number of personalities on here, so happy to join and hop on board and get a chance to chat tonight, about the Tigers, and we'll see where things take us.
Our first interaction, Evan, and you can call me a liar if I'm making this up, but I kind of cold messaged you before inviting you on the show or anything, just saying, hey, man, I think you're doing a great job with the Freep. Is that accurate?
Yeah, no, essentially, and that's good to hear, too. I mean, especially being so young and doing this, just getting out of college. I mean, I'm 22. I think people sometimes, don't understand that there are young people in this industry, too. It's not just bunch of people that have been around for a really long time covering teams, right? Like there's young people in this too that are just coming out. So it's difficult at times. So to hear, some positive feedback and stuff, it was special. It was nice to hear.
Well, it should be a lot coming from me because I don't sling a lot of that like willy-nilly, but I really like what you're doing. You're doing a great job. I recommend everyone read your stuff. Look, I'm not going to put you in a position to bash or comment in any way on your predecessor. I'll just say that there are some people in your industry, not just in Detroit, but around the country, that don't really take their job seriously. And I know you're not reporting on, Benghazi or a crisis at the border, but at the same time, I do appreciate the way you're approaching your job. I think you've run it sort of old school by the book and giving facts and perspective and where it's applicable.
No, that's kind of my takeaway just in general is, be old school because I'm not really good at the memes. I'm not really good at the jokes. Like that's just not what I'm good at. Like I like to tell you exactly what matters and why it matters and just leave it at that, right? Like that's how I approach it at least. Doesn't mean I can't be funny because I can be funny sometimes, like once I get comfortable, but I'm just not into the whole sending out memes and funny tweets and stuff like that. That's just not me. So I appreciate that somebody appreciates the old school, kind of.
I'm a throwback guy, there. Man. I don't normally. I try not to invite guys that are like 10 times better looking than me on the show because I have a very fragile ego. But I appreciate that you're here making me look fat and ugly. So let's get to the nitty gritty. There's a lot to cover, and I don't want to keep you here all night. I know you're busy. It's peak
there is
time
a lot
for
to talk.
you.
There is a lot to talk about, though.
There's a lot to talk about, and I'm on your time. You're not on mine. So if I ramble, kick me in the nuts, and we'll get out. But I want to start here. There's a million ways we could start. I want to start here. AJ Hinch. I have gone on record repeatedly before the hire, during the negotiations, after the fact, and as recently as yesterday on this show, sitting in this chair, that I think AJ Hinch is the number one best manager on the planet working right now today. You were in Lakeland. I was there for a day. I went to a game. It was fun, but I'm not in it like you are. You were around this guy. You're around the team. Everyone that I've talked to, I won't name names, not players, but reporters, media, people that know the Ilitch family say that it's been a huge 180 in how it's being run. He's running things a different way. What do you make of AJ Hinch? What is he trying to change? What is he doing differently there?
Well, you talk about him being one of the best baseball managers on the planet, right? I think he was that too, pre-sign stealing scandal in Houston, right? And if it hadn't been for that, he still probably would be one of the best managers, if not the best manager in all of baseball. So I think it's a great get for the Tigers, one. But, two, just looking at what happened in spring training, you're looking at a guy that approached this job with an entirely different mindset. And I wrote a story in the Free Press. Go check it out. It's interesting. It's got kind of a detail of what he learned along his managerial path, right? So it's not all about the psychology degree from Stanford. That's huge because that plays a role in it. But at the same time, like there is more to it. It's the failure in Arizona when he was with the Diamondbacks, really young manager. And he was telling me a story, this one, we were talking on the phone and he told me the story. I walked into the clubhouse and it was some 40 days into his managerial tenure, right? He just started. He's a guy who comes from the front office. So remember that too. He came from the front office in Arizona and he walks into his clubhouse and he just rips on everybody. Gives them 20 things that they were doing wrong, right? And they're facing Zach Greinke that night. And he says, that was the biggest mistake that I ever made there was, and he said, we won the game, so it was fine. Like, it was great. It seemed like it was a good thing at the time. But, like, long-term camaraderie in the clubhouse, stuff like that, didn't really work out, especially with him coming from the front office and being so young. guys didn't like that he came in there so aggressive and told him everything he was doing wrong. And he said, later on I learned I never set the foundation. I never set the foundation of doing those things right. I gave them 20 things they were doing wrong, but I thought back and said, well, did I ever set that expectation of doing that right? And he was like, I never did that. He's like, I didn't know that when I was a young manager. I had no idea that's how I was supposed to do it. I thought I had to just kind of wear the uniform and act the part and look the part and stuff like that. But I needed to be AJ Hinch, and AJ Hinch sets expectations. And so obviously that happens in Arizona, and he goes to the front office in San Diego, and he's there for a little bit. And then he gets a job with Houston and approaches it an entirely new way. He does it AJ Hinch's way. And that's setting expectations from day one. That's one-on-one meetings with guys. And he's very blunt too. And he tells you exactly where you're at in the organization, exactly what he wants to see from you, and exactly where you can go, right? He did that with Jake Rogers this spring. Walked in there and said, hey, listen, like, you've been so focused on your hitting that your catching is no good. Like, you're not this guy that's this premier catching prospect anymore. You got to focus on your catching again. And the hitting does have to come. And so, by 3 weeks into camp, you see Jake Rogers focus on the catching, and we ask, and he's like, yeah, we've seen improvements. Like, he looks better behind the plate, and now we got to get the hitting part right. But like, it's those little things that he just notices, and he tells you exactly where you're at. And I think a lot of the players have really enjoyed that. For some of them, it's a little bit tougher maybe to hear than others, but that's an entirely new approach. To sit down there and have one-on-one meetings and tell them exactly where you're at. Like, there should be no reason why anybody on the team, anybody on the 40-man roster, anyone within the organization, like, doesn't know where they're at. Like, they all know their place because he's told them their place. And so I think that's the biggest thing.
And that's big. I mean, here's why I like him. I mean, there's a number of reasons, but the most popular, like, if you took a poll, manager in Detroit Tigers history, post Sparky Anderson, post World Series, is Jim Leyland by far. I mean, it doesn't have a lot of competition.
It's not even close.
But it's Jim Leyland. I had a lot of issues with Jim Leyland, but to his credit, guy ran the clubhouse tight. The players respected him. They bought in. You didn't have a lot of issues in the paper floating up. They had a couple things smaller here and there. Victor Martinez chirping the fans, but for the most part, kept it in line. My issue was the flip side. I thought in-game did a lot of stupid stuff. Don Kelly batting second for some reason. Nobody knows why. Nobody understands it.
No love for Don Kelly over here?
Well, not in the 2-hole. I mean, he has a place as a utility guy in the 9-hole. And the best is like when I was going absolutely apoplectic in the playoff series against the Yankees, and then Don Kelly goes yard on the first pitch I got in the 2-hole. So I was actually at that game at Yankee Stadium with my buddy. But but either way, it's a dumb move. Delman Young batting second or third like for months on end, even though he couldn't get on base. It's just, I hated that stuff. AJ Hinch, to me, seems to meld that. No nonsense, sets expectations, as you said, not going to suffer any fools. But he marries that, all the things I liked about Jim Leyland, with the antithesis of Jim Leyland as a manager. He's analytical. He's the most shift-heavy manager in baseball, which who knows, that may go in or out. We don't know. But he's got more of the thinking man's cap in terms of the strategy. Do you think that's a fair assessment? I see the best of both worlds with him, and that's why I put him at number one.
Yeah, I mean, you look at what he is as a person, and he's, personable in general. You hear him talk to us, and when we're talking to him, I mean, every answer is so detailed. It feels like, and this is, I say this is the worst thing and the best thing, because every answer feels like it could be an entirely new story. Like it can be an entire story on its own. You ask him about, Daz Cameron, because Daz Cameron, one of the prospects that came over in the Justin Verlander trade, and it's like, playing out in right field. And we're just asking him about Daz Cameron, how's he looking, coming back from the elbow injury that he had when he was playing in Puerto Rico, played winter ball over there, only got 2 games, then got injured. So, like, how is that progression going? And he just starts talking about how we need to get Daz Cameron back to playing center field because we need to develop a second position, because if we have Riley Green come up and we have another outfielder, like, we need to find spots for these guys. So it's like things like that you're just like, he goes into these like tangents a little bit, and it's just like, wow, like, okay, like center field, that actually makes sense. Like, that's a story. Like, that's interesting. Okay, let's dig deeper into that. So like everything almost feels like it's another story with him, which is great, but it's also, there's only so much you can write about. But no, like, yeah, he has this understanding of his players. He understands what makes them tick. That's part of the psychology degree. That's part of the failure in Arizona. And then he also has the analytical mindset where he looks at the numbers, he understands them. But like, I want to make sure people understand that, like, he doesn't just look at numbers either. Like, you look at opening day. Matthew Boyd was pitching, and it was the 5th inning, and he had 2 walks in that inning, and there were 2 outs, so there ended up being runners on first and second, right, with Jose Ramirez coming up, a guy who people are projecting him to possibly be the American League MVP. And he's in the box, and he's batting right-handed. And, Boyd's a lefty, and, Jose is a switch hitter. And you have Daniel Norris in the bullpen. You could have brought Daniel Norris in. They have Juan Nieves, who's filling in for Chris Fetter. He goes out and checks on Boyd, and Boyd thinks he can get it done. And AJ says, okay, like, we're going to ride with you then. Like, you deserve this. You pitch well enough to earn this. So it's not just numbers. The numbers would tell you to bring in Daniel Norris or a lefty reliever out of the bullpen to face, a guy like Jose Ramirez with runners on first and second and 2 outs in a critical point in the game. And he circled that on the, he has a card that he keeps with, different things that happened during the game. And he circled that. He said that was probably the at-bat of the game. And Boyd got it done. So it's things like that where he has a feel for those things. And I think that's what really puts him over the top. It's more than just being able to feel out the personalities and understand the analytics. It's when you can really blend that and find positive results. And they're not always going to be perfect. He's not always going to be perfect. He's going to fail. There's going to be times where he makes poor decisions, but there's going to be times where he makes really good decisions too. And we saw that on opening day.
Well, you make so many decisions in the course of one game, let alone times 162, but you just captured exactly why I like him. Because there's these warring factions where everybody on this side is analytics, and they have 72 different acronyms for how fast this guy goes from first to third. It's florp and flippity-doppity doop, and everything, they're beholden to that. Then you have the converse, where it's all the analytics are stupid, just give me batting average, ERA, and shut the fuck up with everything else. And they're both wrong. And I think he does marry sort of the best of both worlds. And, just in the same way we said with running the clubhouse and incorporating analytics, he uses them. They're a tool, but he's not completely beholden. He's not going to close his eyes. Otherwise, at that point, just get a machine to run the thing.
Right.
Just plug in the probability.
Yeah. I think the other thing, too, that jumps out is just what he notices as well. I mean, I mentioned that a little bit, but watching film over the offseason, like, he immediately understood that the outfielders had poor pre-pitch setup in terms of, taking that first step, getting ready to go and being in a position to, make a play on a ball if it comes out your way. Like, they just weren't doing it. Like, and nobody noticed it. And so I don't know if that, and I don't want to knock on Ron Gardenhire or his staff or anything like that, but it just tells you how deep he thinks about things. He doesn't just see like the surface level. He digs deeper than that. And you also see that too with just the aggressive, like you're gonna see the Tigers be a lot more aggressive on the bases. Like we saw that in opening day, like with Victor Reyes on that ball that was hit by Jacoby when he hit it out to left field and hit it out for a double. But Victor Reyes was aggressive on the bases and was able to go around and force an error, a bad throw, miss the cutoff guy, and he scores, right? Like those are things that with that aggressive base running, if you don't have that, you probably don't score that run there. And it's just the little things like that I think really stand out. It's the developing secondary positions. Like you see Isak Paredes moving over and playing second base, this spring. We saw that a lot. He's going to come up this year and get a chance. And Spencer Torkelson, the guy that's supposed to be the guy, right? He's not a third baseman. He's a first baseman and a third baseman. And after he was drafted, Al Avila and everybody else in the front office pounded home the idea that he is a third baseman because what does that do? It adds value. Okay, it adds value to a player, and you want to make everybody believe that he's a third baseman. And they told him not even to work on first base this offseason. And AJ comes in and says, no. We got to play him at first base too, because what happens if Jeimer Candelario is an extension guy? What if he's really good? What if he's actually good? Now, I am not all in on Jeimer Candelario at this point based on what we saw last year. I think he was really cold and then really hot and then cooled down at the end of the year. But what if he is really good across 162 games? What if you want to keep him at third base? Are you never going to bring Torkelson up? No, you need to develop him at first base to give him an avenue. It's all about pathways. And like he sees those things, I think, and he looks ahead and he understands what they're trying to do. But I just think all around it was a good hire. And I think it's gonna bring good things. But at the same time, too, you have to remember that this team isn't a team that's like on paper ready to compete for anything. So it's not going to be easy either. It's not like he's going to walk in the door and make them World Series champs.
No, and nobody expects that. And all the more reason, by the way, to be aggressive and try to manufacture runs. Because if they're going to be standing around on first base waiting for the 2-run homer, you'll get the occasional one. We saw one yesterday, but not going to be a frequent occurrence. I want to finish with Hinch here. He talked about, I think he actually used the exact phrase, the elephant in the room at his press conference with the cheating scandal in Houston. You mentioned it briefly earlier. Look, we all know we don't have to rehash whether they should have hired him, or how bothered you are. I don't care how bothered somebody is. It's water under the bridge. But I'm just curious, having been in Lakeland for the past month plus, is it even sort of a presence? I mean, it certainly didn't seem to be a storm over Lakeland, this whole cheating scandal. I didn't hear anything about it. Is there any sort of talk about it? Is there any lingering effects, or is that just kind of totally water under the bridge at this point?
We'll see it at points this season when they're on the road and they go play in New York.
In the house,
we'll see that, but
in-house.
in-house, no, because I mean, listen, you have to remember, he's a smart guy too. Like, he has a psychology degree from Stanford. Like, he understands how to answer questions. He understands how to read people, and he understands how to get his point across and do it in a very methodical way. Like, he just gets those things. And so, yeah, I mean, and I asked him about this too, because we had this one-on-one conversation for the story that I was working on with just his path through, his managerial career. And I that was part of the story at the end, was just, what was it like addressing your team about this? And it was raw. It was emotional. I told him I was thankful that I had the opportunity to, be their manager and be their leader, and that I wasn't going to let them down. And like, that was just it. And then, I said, hey, is that, anybody upset by that, or was there any bad? And he said, no, not really. Like, they kind of just accepted it and took it as it is. And from everybody that we've heard from too, on the player side of things, it's just, he's our manager and he's got a ring. So we're going to ride with him. Like that's literally the thought, because when you bring those credentials to the table, and you've been to 2 World Series, and you made the playoffs 4 out of your 5 years in Houston, and you have George Lombard on your bench as your bench coach. You have him. He just got a ring in Los Angeles with the Dodgers. Chip Hale has a ring on the coaching staff as well. Like, you don't really need much more. Like, okay, you can, and also too, like the situation in Houston, he's been really upfront about that and really straight up. And I think you have to be if you're in his shoes, because you can't just kind of deflect that. He's been really
what his old players did. Carlos Correa was victim blaming everybody.
Well, right, but I think for him, it's you were the guy who was punished. I mean, you were the one who took the heat for it.
Yeah, unfairly, I would argue, but
okay. But I think the thing that's important to know too is, and for anybody that says that he doesn't deserve a job, and I'll back him on that. He did his time. It's over. Yeah. I mean, that's my thought on it. Is like,
he paid a huge price that'll never leave him. He had to sit around for a year, which was probably miserable for a guy like that is such a workaholic, likes to be in it. Yeah, he paid his penance.
But anything, if you're going to be upset with anybody about that, be upset with the commissioner's office for not making it a 5-year suspension or not making it a lifetime. Like, don't be upset at AJ Hinch for going and getting a job when it was there for him, because he did his time. And don't be upset with the Tigers either, because the Tigers went out and got the best guy, and he had done his time. He was a free man in baseball, if you want to throw that out there. Yeah.
You're in 2021, so everybody's got to clutch the pearls and get all bent out of shape.
Yeah.
The guy sat out. He paid a big price. Enough's enough. This is America. Move on. 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th chances in this land. Thank God for that. I think it's a good thing, not a bad thing. So, natural transition. I have argued repeatedly that I don't think AJ Hinch is here right now if he's not granted certain assurances of some fashion, in some way, that the Tigers are going to spend when the time is right. And that's been the phrase, when the time is right, when the time is right, when the time is right. I want to start here. Our good friend Tony Paul, you have a relationship with him as well. He's one of my favorite journalists in the state of Michigan. Great Tigers mind.
Great guy. And a great guy, too.
Wonderful guy.
Yeah.
Love Tony. So I want to play a little clip of when he was here. He said that the Detroit Tigers this past offseason, they blew it, and it was a wasted offseason. So we'll play that, and I want you to react to it.
I've been absolutely disappointed with what shape the rebuild has taken this offseason, in that I don't think it's taken any shape at all. I think that they've done nothing, and I think this was the perfect time to strike. So I think they have the pieces, but they haven't been as proactive as I would like to see them in filling in the holes and the gaps around, because I think that this team, with some good free agent signings, some good moves, I think this team could be in contention in 2022. Now I don't believe that. I think this was a wasted offseason.
So Tony calls it a wasted offseason. They blew it, and I could have played a 17-minute clip from the show. He got into all the reasons why. I'm curious for your stance. Did they blow it? Should they have been more aggressive in the market? What is your take on that? Do you agree with Tony Paul?
I agree and I disagree. I like to, and I told you this before the show, I like to see both sides of things. I don't like to be, I don't like to be narrow-minded on things. I like to be able to see both sides. And I guess just to counter, the point that he made, and I think they could have done more, but the counter to that is, you talk about like filling holes, right? And being able to get guys at established spots and lock them in, right? And find, established pieces, right? And start to build and start to do that. Where are those spots that you need guys at? Like they don't like.
Is that rhetorical?
No. That's the point though. That's the point though. Is you don't know, and that's what it all goes back to. Is sure you would have liked to see them go get like a corner outfielder maybe. That's not named Nomar Mazara. I don't even think they needed to get Nomar Mazara. I don't agree. I did not think that was a signing that they needed to to get done. I understand they got him really cheap, and he's a guy that might be able to get back to hitting 20 home runs for you, and maybe he's a good, trade deadline candidate if somebody needs a power bat. But I didn't even know if they needed him. But the point is, though, like, if you want to lock a guy into 4 years, 5 years, how do you know where you want them at? Like, because you don't know if Jeimer Candelario is going to be a third baseman like now or never. Like, is he going to be a guy that's going to be around here in 2 years, 3 years? Is he a guy that's an extension guy? Like, you don't know. Willie Castro, he's only played like 65 games in the majors. Like, I don't think he's ever going to be an everyday shortstop. I think they're going to need to get a shortstop this offseason, and we can get into that. But I think he's going to have to move over to second. But being in the lineup and with his bat, is he actually someone that can be in that lineup, or is he not going to turn out? What about Casey Mize and Tarek Skubal? You talk about those two guys. Now, if they turn out and they're really good, well, then you're looking pretty good, and you can add a solid piece to that rotation and be good. But what if they're no good? Like, what if they're not good? Then you start this rebuild all over again. And so, no, but I understand that. But I think that's why they pumped the brakes on spending this offseason, is because they didn't know exactly what they had. Isaac Paredes, like, you're going to get to see him a lot this year. He's going to come up and he's going to play a lot. And so for him, like, is he a guy that can be an everyday second baseman? Because if he is, then you can check that off the list, and but you don't know that over 60 games. You couldn't figure that out.
You're right. Look, everything you said is accurate. It's a fact. They have all these question marks, but why in year 4, year 5 of a rebuild is the entire roster a question mark? And that's the question. Now, it may be a separate question of why they didn't spend, but you're saying accurately, you're right, that they don't even know what they have. They don't know if this guy's a third base, he's going to play left field. They don't know who's who. That's okay in year 1 or 2. This rebuild didn't just start. And the fact that they have this many question marks, this many holes to fill, is an indictment in its own right, I would argue. Here's what I'll say, and I talked about it with Tony, and I've been very consistent across the board. I was, which is rare, on the more positive, less cynical side of Tony Paul for maybe the first time in recorded history. I've known him a long time. I said on this show I was okay doing the Mazzara, Grossman type shit for one more year. I would have liked to have been at the ball a year earlier, but one more year. And that's going to transition us to the upcoming offseason in 6 months or whenever it is. This is contingent on one thing. They were promising us almost 5 years ago, when the time is right, I'm going to spend. Chris Ilitch, the owner, says, I'm going to spend. I've been very patient. And it's hard for me because I'm an impulse buyer. Ask my wife. I see anything on Amazon, it's on the porch like the next day. Can't help myself. I've waited half a decade. I bleed orange and blue. But I've accepted this. But this brings us to 2022. I know Lynn Henning retired before you got your start, but you know who Lynn Henning is, right?
Yeah.
Detroit News, for a long time still parachutes in and writes a column here and there. One of the better technical writers we've seen in Detroit in the last 50 years, I would argue, certainly in my lifetime. Lynn Henning has a reputation for being very plugged in. He's had, with the Tigers specifically, he's had numerous things over the years. He's the one that broke the story about Brad Ausmus coming back. He's got a good track record. I want to throw up a quote that he had published back in February, and I'll read it for the audio listeners here. You can expect to see legitimate baseball life, interest, enthusiasm, reasons to buy a Comerica Park ticket, etc., return in 2022. It's a matter of young talent graduating to the big leagues and the inevitability of a box office free agent or two signed during the coming offseason, which will happen. Look at that quote. Leave it up, Ben, please. We all know the young talent graduating the big leagues. Yeah, we've heard that for half a decade. We know. They finished dead last or close to it for half a decade. We get it. That was built in. Lynn calls this, and Lynn knows what he's talking about. He talks to management. He has connections. The inevitability, that's one, of a box office free agent, that's two, or two, that's a third point, because now we're talking about multiple, signed during the offseason, which will happen. Not might happen, which could happen, which they think might happen, will happen. That's someone that knows what he's talking about. So he's telling me back in February, and I happen to believe that he believes this, that it's not likely, not possible, but inevitable that this team signs box office free agents, plural potentially, and it's going to happen. If it doesn't, I'm going to completely theoretically, don't call the cops and they burn the house down. Because enough. I've waited half a decade. I'm curious, do you agree with Lynn Henning's assessment? Box office doesn't mean middle tier. That means we're talking Carlos Correa, Trevor Story. I wouldn't call Javier Baez box office, but some might. You're in that basket. Corey Seager is my number one, actually.
Okay. Yeah, so I agree. 100%. I don't think
they need to.
That they need to and that they will.
You think they will?
Oh yeah. You don't like I've said this from the beginning. You don't bring AJ Hinch in to be your manager to lose. You don't.
But
here's the flip side of that too, though, is like, look how much money that those guys are gonna be asking for.
I don't care. You cry me a river.
Right, but
pay it.
No, but I understand that's what everybody wants, but the flip side of that is they just gave Robbie Grossman 2 years, $10 million, and you're about to make a jump from that to big boy money.
Good.
And so we've
earned it.
But that's where I think people need to, maybe be a little bit worried that jump isn't going to actually happen, because it seems like it needs to happen, right? Like,
well, then no one needs to go to the game ever again. I'm sorry, but we've waited long enough.
I know. I think it needs to happen. I think it will happen. But I think my only reservations about that is just the fact that that's a big jump to make. And that's a lot to ask when you have seen no proof of that happen. You haven't seen any proof of a timeline. There hasn't been a date set. It's just been like, whenever it's right. And I guess, and obviously part of that, as Lynn mentioned in the quote, was graduating the talent to the big leagues. I think that's, and it's huge. It's huge, and it all surrounds AJ Hinch. Like, there's a reason why Casey Mize and Tarek Skubal are both in the majors to start the year, and it's because of AJ Hinch. He knows that those two pitchers have the stuff to be really good. But what are they going to do if they go to the alternate training site in Toledo? What are they going to do if they pitch for the Mud Hens? They're going to dominate AAA, and then they're not going to get anything from it, right? So that's why they're here. AJ Hinch was giving Jake Rogers every opportunity to make the big league team. All he had to do was put up a couple more competitive at-bats, and he would have made the team. Like that. That's how it would have unfolded, because he understands that you need to get those guys up. You need to figure out exactly what you have, and then you need to make some moves.
I agree with
and the same thing.
That.
The same thing's Isak Paredes too. Isak Paredes was, in my opinion, and kind of from what I heard bouncing around, almost a shoo-in to make the team out of spring training if he would have just hit a little bit more. And he didn't hit, and AJ calls it a competition, and he has to honor that. He honors that competition. But that's why I'm saying we're going to see Isak Paredes soon. We will. I am almost confident. I'm pretty darn confident, as long as Jake Rogers doesn't absolutely crap the bed in Toledo, that he's going to come up to the majors at some point this year, because they have to figure out what they have in him. So that process, like, AJ Hinch is pushing that process along. We are going to see Matt Manning up at some point this year. Spencer Torkelson and Riley Green, I give them a good shot to make the team out of camp next year, as long as they're producing in the minors this year. As long as they're doing what I guess we would all expect they would do, there's no reason why they won't be, because this process needs to move along, and it starts with those guys, because you need to know what you have before you invest. And so I think if they can get some of that figured out now, I think it makes that jump from the Robbie Grossman 2-year $10 million to all the money that you're going to throw at a Correa or a Story or a Seager. It makes it worth it, and it makes it, it's something that you can get behind. AJ can walk into Al's office and say, Al, and Chris Ilitch can be there too, and say, hey, listen, here's exactly what I know about all these guys. Here's exactly where we can use additions, and this is how we're going to do it. And also remember too, when they talk about this a lot, AJ's plan. They all say AJ's plan. Oh, AJ came in with a plan when we interviewed him. It wasn't like, oh, AJ, you're hired, here's our plan. It was AJ came in with his plan. And I think
interviewed them as much, it felt like.
I really, truly, I do, because that guy could have just sat back and waited for the next job to open up. Like, he was in a rush to get back because he wanted to be back, but at the same time, like, there was nothing stopping him from saying, no, I'll wait, because he could have got a job. So he could have got a job at a team that could win now. If the White Sox wouldn't have hired La Russa, he would have been in Chicago, taking him to the World Series this year. Like, that's the kind of guy that he is. And that's the kind of guy that people view him as around the industry. So
yeah, he
has a plan that he came in with, and that's why I think there's no way that they don't spend. They're going to have to, and they're going to have to get a big shortstop, like a big time shortstop. The market is there for those guys, and I think that's where you start. I don't really know where you go with number 2 next year if you were to sign a second big box office free agent. But I think if there's anything, it's obviously got to be a shortstop. You have to get a shortstop and lock that down.
I mean, I'll give you the answer. One of those shortstops, I want Seager, but I'd be okay with one of the other two. Baez, He's good, but
Correa Story they would enjoy.
My power rankings would be Seager, Story, Correa, and I like all three quite a bit. But it'll be one of those three and Verlander. That's what I need them to come out with for me to be like, okay, you kept your word. Anything short of that, even if they just sign like one of them, and that's the only thing they do, better than nothing. But I'm not going to say, bravo, it was worth the half a decade of total incompetence and irrelevance. But you gave this beautiful answer, and it was AJ Hinch. All the reasons AJ Hinch is the reason they're going to spend. It's not about AJ Hinch. It comes down, and you mentioned it, is Chris Ilitch going to say yes when AJ Hinch presents it to him? We have no evidence, as you said, that he will. I was put off a little bit. Brad Galli, who I only saw this, by the way, because he unblocked me sometime in the last 24 hours. Because I went to reach out to Brad Galli a week ago with a question, and I was blocked. Now I'm suddenly, for some reason, unblocked. So thank you, Brad. But Brad Galli put this on his Twitter. He was asking Al Avila yesterday about the timeline. Did he approach Chris Ilitch about, hey, let's open up the pocketbook? God bless you, Brad Galli, for asking, because someone needs to put that pressure on. It needs to be there. So, Ben, can you play that really quick? And I'm curious for your take on this, because I'm not encouraged by the answer.
You add pieces like you did last year that really did work. I think the Scope Edition last year really proved to be a great pickup. I'm curious, I know you have so much patience as a general manager in baseball, but was there a point in this offseason where you knocked on Chris Ilitch's door and said, can we spend some more money this year? Can we go sign some bigger name guys and maybe accelerate this a little bit more?
Well, the only thing about that is, you have to be careful. I have very little patience, but you have to have patience in that, just like I mentioned before, we've got to establish, and I had this conversation with AJ Hinch when we were, just before we hired him, actually in the hiring process. And then afterwards, we agreed that one of the things that we have to really establish here is our pitching. And once that's done, then we can move forward.
Okay, so look, Al Avila's notorious. Tony Paul loves him because he gives really blunt answers. He tells you the truth. He's not like a Bill Belichick. So if he thought they were on the verge of big things, I think it would have been somehow, even in a low-key way, weaved into that answer. Where that audio, which was from yesterday, from April 1st, 2021, could have been, minus the COVID mask, but absent of that, just the audio, could have been a clip from January 2017. It's the same exact line. It's not the time yet. We got to be patient. The patient. I was patient in 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020. I'm even being patient now, but I'm just like, does that worry you at all, that answer? Because it's the same exact response. I don't know how you're no farther along between 2017 and now. It's the same script, identical.
Same script, sure. I'll give you that. I think that's fair, because I do think that it's been the same mantra of, just wait and see, like it'll happen, like don't worry. But some of that also is because he's a general manager, and he can't just come out and say, oh, we're giving you the same narrative as we have the last 3 years, wish us luck. You know what I mean? Like, he can't come out and say that. But I think there is some fairness to what he's saying. I do understand the point of, it's been 3 years, it's been 4 years, it's been so long, like why are we getting the same message? But at the same time too, like, as much as it's been the same narrative, it's also new players. I mean, you have Casey Mize and Tarek Skubal and Matt Manning and Alex Faedo and Joey Wentz, and you have Torkelson and Green and Paredes and Daz Cameron, and there are players on this team that were not here in 17. And so I think when he talks about getting the pitching right, I think that comes down to really Casey Mize and Tarek Skubal, and then Matt Manning when he comes up the halfway point, and then also too, like, what do you get from Spencer Turnbull? Like, is he going to be a guy that could be a 3 or a 4, or is he more of a 5 at best? Where does he fit in when it's all said and done? When they hope to be at the top, I mean, where does he fall into line? So I think there's a lot of things like that come back to my original point was they got to figure out what they're gonna, like, what is this year gonna provide for Mize and Scoop? Like, those are two, like those two players are so big in this rebuild. I don't think people understand it sometimes, just how big those two players are, because of the emphasis on pitching. You look at teams that make runs, teams that are good, like, pitching like that'll get you there. Obviously the bats, they're going to need bats, they're going to need to be able to do damage and stuff like that. But I mean, if you can keep teams from scoring, I mean, if you can limit teams to 1 or 2 runs in a playoff game, like, you're putting yourself in a pretty good spot to win that series if you're doing that on a nightly basis. So I think that comes back to, I think that quote, to kind of dissect it at least, comes down to we need to figure out what we have in Tarek Skubal and Casey Mize. And when Matt Manning gets here, we need to figure out what we have in him, and we need to figure it out right now. And because if they don't have anything in those guys, they're toast, man. Like, this whole thing is toast.
But let's say they come to the determination that they are toast, that they botched the rebuild, they blew it, they missed on draft picks, they cashed in all those veterans, and they got next to nothing in return. Let's go down that path, because that's not a crazy hypothetical.
No.
We're going to get to Casey Mize and his troubles in a second, but it's very possible that they blew it. The half decade was wasted. Tony Paul said they wasted this year. Maybe they wasted the last 4 or 5 years.
Look at the Verlander trade.
Disaster.
Look at the JD Martinez trade.
Disaster.
Justin Upton.
Disaster. You know, if you want to do throw a parade for the Justin Wilson Al Avila trade, I mean, I'm not going to.
No, but it's almost mind-blowing, though, that package to get Candelario and Paredes is better than what you got with Verlander.
That's the silver package.
Verlander, Martinez, and Upton combined. You got more for Justin Wilson and Alex Avila.
Yeah, meanwhile, the Yankees trade 2 months of Aroldis Chapman for Gleyber Torres and then just sign Chapman again 2 months later. That was glorious.
So it is a real possibility, though. Like, you've seen,
right.
Evaluating how the trades went, you can see why things might not work out. Now, I do think Casey Mize and Tarek Skubal are both going to be good major league.
Oh, we'll get there in a second. Don't jump the gun, though. Let me finish, Evan. So we're going to live in this treacherous world that we've just proposed. I'm not saying I'm predicting it. I'm just saying it's not like a 4% chance. It's like a 28% chance at least that they just totally blew it. So couldn't you make the argument, if you're Chris Ilitch sitting on the Temple Mount, that, look, the time isn't right. We're not on the verge of winning. I'm not spending. And then it's another 5 years where they're not signing anybody of consequence. Couldn't that happen reasonably? I don't think that's a crazy hypothetical. And if it does, we're going to go 10 years of this and counting. I mean, am I nuts? That could happen, right? I know you think they're going to spend, but I'm not nuts to think that they may have just blown this entirely.
Well, I think they're going to spend if their prospects are good.
No, but if we're not living in that world. We're living in these guys fall short. Miles gets blown off,
exactly.
hurts his arm, God forbid, or whatever.
Exactly. I think they're going to spend as long as the prospects are not. But if they don't, you're going to hear the same message, and then you're going to hear the questions of, well, wasn't Mize supposed to get you out of this? And then it comes back to, okay, what's the player development like? What's going on? You know, who are you drafting? Who are these trades for? Like, right now, you can kind of live with it because you can see why there's some optimism. But at some point, like, if that goes away and you lose all of that, then you got nothing to stand on. Now you can, right now you can stand on the whole, we want to see how these prospects turn out and then we'll spend. Like, you can make a case for that. But if they don't turn out, you have nothing to stand on. You're a dead man at that point.
Yeah, well, Avila is. I mean, you can't fire the owner. But yeah, I would have to think that'd be the end of Avila. You said they would go back to the same message. They would be delivering that message to an empty chair, because the people like me that have just taken a lot of punches as a diehard Tigers fan, waiting for this thing, I'd not even taking them at their word. It's like, really, what choice do you have? Oh, I don't take you at your word. I just don't pay attention to baseball. Right. I took their word because I didn't have any choice but to take their word. But look, as much as I love this team and love baseball, good luck getting my eyeballs if they don't spend. And if they blew this rebuild, it's not, the circumstances don't allow for you to spend. It's not like your circumstances flew out of the sky. I thought Al Avila should have been fired 4 years ago. You kept him. If he blew it, I'm not going to say, he blew it, it's okay not to spend. Mike Ilitch bought his way out of bigger problems than this. Figure it out. I have no sympathy. We've waited. Enough's enough. You talked about Casey Mize. I want to transition to him. Look, I have some concerns about Casey Mize. I'm curious where you stand on this, and I'm going to run down some of this. Small sample size, but he was taken 1-1 in 2018. So you look at half of 2018, if you want to count that as a season, it's like half of one. Some guys have gone right to the league. They're in their draft year. 2019, 2020, 2021. So we are 4 years removed from a college pitcher, not a high school player. It'd be totally different if you were a high school pitcher. A college pitcher going 1-1, and we still have no sign that he's good. He had an ERA of 7 last year, an ERA of 7.23 this spring. Like, at what point am I starting to get concerned? I'm already there. I'm not burying him. I'm not saying they fucked it up. But is there legitimate concern that this guy is going to be a bust?
Well, I think going back to what you just said, a guy that you took 1-1 and it took him until 2020 to get to the majors, like, that's something against him. I think that's more of just, I think what you're going to see too in this new I would say, I guess I consider like a new mindset of the Tigers is just to push the prospects a little bit more. Like I almost wonder, if Casey Mize, and maybe Scooble as well, but more Mize, if Mize would have pitched in 19, at least a little bit, how much further along is he at this point? And maybe he's not, maybe he is, but I guess going back to the point though of being worried and concerned about him, I think I always go back because I have this internal debate all the time. This is like the debate that goes on in my head, and it's back and forth, and it's this tug and pull for me of like, you have to remember that this is a guy who was so good for so long in college and in the minors because he didn't need to like be perfect to be good. You know what I mean? His stuff was so good that you could get away with so many things down there that you can't get away with in the major leagues. And so it goes back for me to strike throwing. Like when he throws strikes and he's consistent in the strike zone and pounds the zone, he's really good. Like we saw that against the Blue Jays when he was pitching, and he had 9 strikeouts and he looked really good this spring. We also saw earlier in spring training when he would try to just, throw around the strike zone and be really pretty with it and stuff like that. And that was just, guys are too smart at the major league level. And I think he realized that. And I think that's the biggest thing too, was like, imagine that you're so good at something at the college level, in the minor leagues, where anything that you do, you can basically get away with it and it works and everything works for you. And then you get to the majors and it's like, okay, I have to actually think about throwing strikes. I have to actually try to throw strikes because when I would throw it around the zone, guys would swing and miss like crazy. And, I had no problems, right? It was easy for him at that level because he was so much, the stuff is so much more advanced. Now the command of the stuff is a different story because that comes down to throwing strikes and being in the zone and then also knowing when to throw out of the zone. It's so detailed and it's so complex. And so I think there's an angle of it where you take it of, okay, maybe we should be a little bit worried because he's not able to match up with these big leaguers, at the plate, right? He's too, he has a mental blockade that's there that's not allowing him to throw these strikes, and he's not as confident in himself. And then you see him have the right mindset and go out and do it, and he strikes out 9 against the heavy Blue Jays line. I mean, Vlad Guerrero was in that, Vlad Guerrero Jr. Like these were guys that were in that lineup on that day. And so you see a little bit of both and you wonder, okay, so where is he actually at? Which pitcher is he going to be? And I think it comes down to, just throwing strikes and having the mindset. I think the stuff is obviously there. Like the stuff is undeniable. You look at the splitter and what he has there and the slider that he throws and his fastball, and he's elevating his fastball more to get him up in the zone at times. And so like the weapons that he brings out with his arsenal are there. Like they're good and they're legit. But where he has his downfall is throwing strikes and focusing on throwing strikes because he's never had to do that in his life. He's never had to focus on throwing strikes. It's always just been there. He's always been a guy who could command the strike zone and do well because he got a lot of swing and misses because his stuff was just really good. And that's where he sits.
Right. And here's why I'm concerned.
It's almost a downfall of being so good.
Everything's valid that you just said. It's just interesting to me that the thing that is killing him right now is the inability to throw strikes because, I mean, you said he was a strike thrower in college. That's like an understatement. This guy, he had one of the best strikeout to walk ratios.
It's unbelievable.
Like in the history of major college baseball. I mean, it was like 12 strikeouts to every walk or something. The guy didn't walk anybody. The guy had like 7 walks in like 110 innings or something. He didn't walk anybody ever. Like if he walked one guy in a game, it was a headline news. So it's like of all things, you get those guys that are just, their stuff is nasty, but they just never, like AJ Burnett had a good career, nasty. He had A+ stuff. He had C+ control. So he had a B career, it kind of equals out in that way. I'm concerned that his bread and butter, obviously the splitter everyone talks about, but was in large part the control. If you read,
no, that's even more than the splitter. I think more so than the splitter.
Read
the
Keith
control.
Law. Keith Law's, he was with ESPN, now with the Athletic, but ESPN at the time it was control. This guy doesn't walk anybody. So basically, short answer: concerns are valid. You don't think I'm a complete
no, not
cynic,
at all. No, not at all.
But at the end of the day, you're landing on it's fine, and he ends up as a good number 2. I mean, I don't believe that it's just fine. I think this year we're going to learn a lot about who he. I think you can make a lot of judgment calls after the end of 162 games. If he's still like
you'll know
5.70 ERA this year, I'm not saying get the dirt and throw it on him, but like at least start looking for a plot in the cemetery. Right. I'm just saying, like you have to at least consider this guy's career might be nothing.
I think if that's how this year turns out, you have to understand that he might not be your ace of the future.
Yeah,
and I think you have to live with that. But right now, I think it's too soon to say, no, there's no way that this guy can be an ace. I think he has the stuff to be an ace. Like he does. The stuff is there, and the stuff is good.
I agree.
But the concerns are valid, and I think that's why everyone's excited for this year because we need to figure out what is this guy? Like who is this guy when he's dialed in. I mean, you saw, like I keep going back to that game against the Blue Jays. He went out there and that he was basically pitching for his spot in the rotation. And he had like this almost like an anger in a way to him where he just wanted to prove everybody wrong and shove it down their throats. And he pitched with, something else that day, and you could see it. And so it's tapping into more of that. Like, you got to be able to get into more of that side of Casey Mize. And even in his last start that he had just before the team broke camp and came up north, like, got a couple strikeouts and was, kind of bouncing off the mound a little bit when he was coming off to go back to the dugout. And it's just things like that if you can get him into his element, I think he can be really good. But it's the consistency, it's the command. I mean, yeah, that's what it comes down to. And we'll figure out. That's what this year is for. I think it's too soon to make a judgment call on that guy. But no, your concerns are valid because, when
hasn't been there. Hasn't been there.
Right.
And he was 1-1. Again, this whole thing's different. If he's some second-round pick or a late first-round pick, like you go 1-1 as a college pitcher, I'm sorry, you're in year 4, like since your draft year. It's COVID. 18's a half year. That's fine. The bottom line is check your calendar. The guy was drafted. He's in the 4th year since he was drafted. I don't care what was going on in the universe.
Right, but I mean, so even and this is also something that is a tug and pull for me too. Is Spencer Torkelson? This spring he looked terrible. This spring, I mean, he looked terrible. But no. But
1 year, not even 1 year.
But listen, I know, right? But he hasn't faced anybody, right? This is his first time doing this, all that kind of stuff. But he's a 1-1. Like it is, and I think that's too like a reality check maybe for some people to understand like where these guys are supposed to be. I mean, I don't know, like. Are there 1-1s that could have gone out there and done better than him? Past 1-1s that would have been able to, have a 250 batting average this spring? Probably. So, like, does that give you concerns or should it not give you concerns? I don't think so for him, but, like, I get your point, though, for Casey. And I think that when you're looking at it from, hey, he's been doing this long enough, he's been there, but he's still fresh to Major League pitching. Almost in the same way, Major League, batters, right? Almost in the same way that Spencer Torkelson was very fresh to Major League pitchers. This spring, Casey Mize is still very fresh to big league batters facing them and the challenges that come with that. So, like I said, I think you're going to find out a lot this year.
Yeah, I'm watching with curiosity and concern. I mean, if I'm landing on something, I think he ends up being like a good number 2 and like we're happy with him. That's my prediction, but I do have legitimate concerns. And if they didn't have AJ Hinch and Chris Fetter, who I am a big believer in, I hated that he went to Michigan and made their team so good and their pitching staff so good as a diehard dyed-in-the-wool Spartan. But I had the utmost respect for Fetter. I think they have the right support system in place, and I think that goes a long way. I mean, we've seen that. I mean, I'm a lot older than you, but like growing up, the Braves always had the best, staff and the best pitching coach, and that made all the difference in the world. So he has a support system in place. So I'm landing on, I think it'll work out.
Yeah.
But I wasn't concerned a year ago. What I saw this spring was concerning. So we'll finish on the Tigers here. We're talking about prospects coming up, and we talked about Torkelson, talked about Mize. I'm not going to do the Lynn Henning deep dive. Lynn Henning is the best at covering this stuff for the Tigers, who they're looking at. Basically, they pick 3rd overall. The Major League Baseball draft, which will no longer be held in Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia. That's a 3-hour show that we won't be doing today. But at that draft that may be located in my basement for all we know on July 11th, they have the 3rd overall pick, and the sort of top of the board has been the same for almost a year. You have 2 pitchers from Vanderbilt, Jack Leiter, who happens to be my favorite. It's been my favorite for a year. Kumar Rocker, and then the shortstop is a little more fluid. There's a couple of prep shortstops, but the biggest one we see and hear is Jordan Lawler, high school prep shortstop. The Tigers, in my opinion, are in a really good spot at pick 3, better than most years in pick 3, because you have a 2-pitcher draft where I think both are going to be great. I think they'll both do a great. I think Leiter will be better. Kumar Rocker, Jack Leiter will both be very good in the majors, I think. So you're either going to get one of these 2 future aces, or you're going to get the best hitter in the draft, whomever you think that is. I think that's a great position to be in. Yeah, you'd rather be 1 or 2, but not all 3rd overall picks are created equal, just ask the Detroit Lions. If I had to have the 3rd pick instead of the 1st or the 2nd in any year, I think this is one of the years. I'm going to get one of the 2 studs or whatever hitter I want. There's no door number 3. So I'm just curious, where do you think they go on July 11th? I know they're very cagey. I don't think they even know there's a lot of scouting to be done, but I would argue that they should go the best prospect available, whoever they think that is. Some people say, hey, the pitching is thicker in that farm system, go the best hitter no matter what. Kind of where do you land on that?
I think you got to go pitcher if he's there. I mean, if you have one of those 2 from Vanderbilt there, which I assume you're going to have one. I mean, Jordan Lawler, the shortstop, the prep shortstop. I mean, I assume he goes 2, probably. That's kind of my guess. And again, where they go depends on where others go. Because who knows? I mean, maybe both the pitchers go 1 and 2, and then you're left with Lawler at 3. And if he's there, you got to get him because he's a guy that could be like a future, like franchise cornerstone type of a shortstop. But he also won't be at the major league level as soon. So if you're trying to, boost this thing and get it going and get it rolling, it would be nice to have a guy who's maybe a little bit more MLB ready. But at the same time, if you want sustainability, I get the point of, sure, you sign a big shortstop or something like that this offseason. You're going to do that, and then you let this guy develop and get him ready. And obviously, too, guys can always move around. Like AJ talked about that too when he was in, when he was in Houston, like with Bregman in there and Correa and. Correa, I think, Correa went down with an injury and Bregman slid over or something like that. So it's just things like that. You can always move guys around. But I personally, I see it kind of going, Leiter 1 and then, Lawler, the shortstop, going 2. And then the Tigers are left with whatever's left. And I think you got to go Kumar Rocker. You never can have too much pitching. I'm a true believer in that. I'm a true believer in pitching wins championships. So I think you got to go that way. You can always buy your bats if you need to. You can make trades. Their farm system is going to be so loaded when they're coming out of this. And look at like and the farm system, as much as we might want to bash like the uncertainties, but there's always uncertainties, right? Like you have no idea what they're going to get, but you could trade, anybody that's like 8 through 30 on your prospect list and probably be okay and get bats if you need to. Like if you're at that point where you're ready to win and you have guys that you're bringing in free agency and you need to keep adding and get guys to get you over that hump, you can always trade for those guys. Like I feel like it's almost more difficult at times to trade for pitchers, guys that could be really good arms in the future because it wins championships. And so I think if Rocker's there, I think you got to take him. Like you just have to take him. And I don't even think it's a question at that point. Like he's the best player on the board. You need more pitching. Who knows? He could be a 1, right? Like Mize could be a 1, Scuba could be a 1, Manning could be a 1. Like if you have all those guys that could be 1s, that could be your ace. Like you're going to land on something.
Yeah, let's be the Oakland A's when they had Tim Hudson, Barry Zito, and Mark Mulder. I mean, that's fine. Or the Braves, Glavine, Maddox, and Smoltz. What kind of a problem was that? I totally agree. This whole argument of like, oh, the pitching staff's loaded. If they're loaded, why is the ERA in the bottom 3 every single year? They're potentially loaded.
Right.
They
correct.
have more and better lottery tickets.
But look at
established.
But look at Joey Wentz, Tommy John. Joey Wentz.
I like him too.
I think he's going to be solid. And I think he's a guy that could make his major league debut this year. He's coming back from Tommy John and going to get into the mix. Once the minor league start and stuff like that, start building back, and he could be a late call up guy. But yeah, so. But then also Alex Fido, right? And just in this past December, Tommy John surgery. Like as much as you're potentially loaded, you're also potentially screwed, just because of Tommy John and things that could go wrong, and you never know. And like I said, like with bats, I think you can always buy bats. Like you can always go out and spend money to get good bats. I think it's more difficult to come across good pitching like that at a young age that you can have for a really long time in your organization. So. Yeah, you got to go pitcher, I think, and it's got to be one of those 2.
And even if 2 of these guys, Mize, Scooble, pop, and they hit, maybe even 3, guess what? That's still 2 or 3 spots in the rotation.
Right.
So I agree.
Right.
First of all, I think Jack Leiter might want to give up a hit sometime this year, but if we're hoping he slides to 3, I mean, he's like just throwing no hitters every game now. So
dude, I cannot imagine though covering Vanderbilt because it's like no hitter watch every night.
Oh, I know.
Feel like
you imagine, but I'm almost like kind of bummed to see he's doing so well because he's been my darling for about a year, and like before he was actually projected in a lot of these mocks at going 3rd, 4th, even 5th. And now it's like...
Well, because Kumar Rocker was always like the guy.
He was the 1-1.
Yeah.
But I mean, what a consolation prize, though, if you get Kumar Rocker at 3. But either way, I think they're well positioned. But I totally agree. I think you hit it on the head. Like, if one of those 2 pitchers are there, you take them. If not, you take the best prep shortstop there is.
And they're ready. I mean, they're closer to being ready for the major leagues than a prep shortstop. Or let's just say that you went a different route for some odd reason and you go and get somebody else, right, that might be, out of high school. Like they're not going to be ready for a little bit longer. And,
a lot longer.
And if you really think, though, that this rebuild is at a point where you're going to be able to spend next offseason, if that's really what they think and that's really what they believe, and I think it is, if you can add, Kumar Rocker to that in, by 2023, 24-ish in there, like you're setting yourself up pretty good to be solid if the rest of your prospects turn out. So it's all a waiting game, and it really is. And that's what sucks about it because you don't really know what's going to happen. It's all a waiting game.
Well, yeah, I mean, It's a waiting game is the Detroit Tigers slogan. I think that's on the
go-to.
headline. Yeah, that's their. It's been a waiting game for a long time. It's a long wait. Look, I mean, if they draft Kumar Rocker 3rd overall, I mean, the Casey Mize equivalent would be the guys getting lit up in spring training in 2024. I really hope that doesn't happen. Which is, I mean, can you imagine they take Kumar Rocker in a couple of months and 3 years later he's like just getting lit up in spring training? That would be a disaster. Which is why we talked about Casey Mize for 10 minutes. But either way, we'll conclude there. I think you and I are in lockstep in general. I think you have a little more assurances in your brain, in your spirit of this team's direction than I do in their commitment to spending. I hope that you and Tony Paul and Lynn Henning can point in my face and laugh at me. I'm not saying I definitely don't think it'll happen, but I'm 90-10 that they're not going to do shit next year either. And I'm going to be sitting here whining to you if you'll come back.
I'll be back. I'll be back.
Hold you to that because that's on tape.
If you send the invite, I'll be back. But no, like I said, push comes to shove. It doesn't really. It's less about spending and more about what do we have and who's going to be good. And if they feel like they're going to be good and they're going to be in a chance, they have a chance to make the playoffs, next season or get close or compete for it. If they like the pieces that they have, I think they're more than willing to spend.
I just want my friend Chris Castellani to be happy. That's all I want. That's the main reason.
Don't we all want Chris to be happy?
Yeah,
though?
I mean, Chris. I'm so glad that guy's back. I miss Chris Castellani.
I enjoy the videos. I watch them.
He's at a point now where he can do a video and just be like, "Yeah, that sucked, man. I don't know what to tell you. Go blue." And then that's the whole video. I think it's like 700 likes. Like he's just. But that's an earned status.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh.
It's not a criticism.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
He's
so
beloved. He's so beloved.
Yeah.
And that's hard for a guy. Like if you're like a really attractive girl, I'm not gonna name names, but there's like certain people in the media that it's like they post a picture of them in a bathrobe, not sensual at all, and it's like 7,000 likes. Chris Castelletti kind of grinded his way to that with these videos, and it's just good to have him back. I really missed him.
And those people though, but guys like Chris and others that follow the team, they want to see something happen.
Oh yeah, I think they deserve it.
They deserve it because they've waited, and I get that. But at the same time, I also see the flip side, which is, you want to do it when the time is right. And I hate to say that. I had to throw that out at you.
We're almost to the speed on it. This is going to launch me on another 1 hour tirade. We went here already. When the time is right, so you're giving them the out that they want to take. By the way, that if this doesn't go well, we get to wait around another 5 years getting kicked in the dick.
But then you have to admit that you failed. And you have to admit to failure at that point. That's my point. Is like the time is right, but the time I'm okay with them spending when the time is right, but the time needs to be this offseason.
So I'm supposed to be okay with them saying, okay, my bad, Avila's gone. See you in 5 years. We'll bid on I don't know, like my son at that point, my now 2-year-old son.
But what else are you going to do though? If none of these prospects turn out, what do? You just spend the house and hope that
spend, buy a team. That's not unprecedented.
Yeah, I mean I get your point. I see what you're saying. No, I see what you're saying. And they would have enough prospects to do it if they're their top guys kind of flamed out. But I think that's getting too far ahead though. Like I said, I think the big thing is what do we see this year is ultimately going to determine what happens in the offseason. And if they see good things, I truly believe they're going to spend. If they don't, listen, man, they're screwed. Like that's how they're screwed.
Well, we agree on that. You said we're looking too far ahead. I agree, but we're not looking that too far ahead. We're looking like maybe just a foot farther down the road.
Right, but it's the development though. It's if these guys are good this year, I truly believe they will spend. And if they're not, like I said, they're going to have to admit to failure.
Well, they all looked like shit in spring, and you were there, so
we'll see.
I'm sorry, I don't know what to make of that because you don't need one of these guys to be good. You need like 5 or 6 of them to be good.
Correct.
And 5 or 6 of them looked like shit in the spring, and it's spring. I know I'm not saying it's the NLBL, but like if I had my druthers, I'd rather see you look like you know what the hell you're doing with a bat in spring, Spencer Torkelson. I'd rather have you not have a 7.30 ERA, Casey Mize, in your 4th year since going 1-on-1 as a college pitcher, a consensus 1-1, not a slot reason 1-1. But anyway, neither here nor there. I'm depressed about this team. I don't think they're going to do anything this year. I don't think anyone expects that. I don't think they're going to spend next year. I think this is going to be a hamster spinning the wheel. I hope you, Tony Paul, and Lynn Henning are right, and you can laugh when you're back here next time. We'll see. You know what we do. We're going to get to the speed round. I enjoyed the Tiger conversation. We're going to touch on them one more time at the top of the speed round. Let's get to it.
Oh, boy.
So here we go. The last Tiger thing I'm going to bring up tonight. We talked about Casey Mize and Spencer Torkelson and Drake Skubal and all the ones on Baseball America. You were all up in the grill of a lot of prospects for a month. Who is the best Detroit Tiger sleeper prospect? The guy that's not on the top 10. Did you see anybody in spring down in Lakeland? Did you hear any buzz about a certain guy? This guy that was taken in the 37th round looks good. Is there anybody that's kind of under the radar that no one's talking about that you think has a chance, maybe not to be a star, but to be a functional big leaguer for the Tigers?
No, I mean, I think they have a couple guys out of their bullpen that could be pretty good. I mean, like Logan Shore, I think could be pretty good. Jason Foley could be good. He's got a really strong arm, throws really hard. You even want to like look around. I mean, I know Dylan Dingler was a second round pick, but I think a lot of people like worry about, Jake Rogers, that didn't work, and the development there, we haven't seen much there. I mean, I think Dylan Dingler could actually be better than people think he is. I think there's a lot of tools there. He's one of those guys who's in a top 10. Like, you need him to be good, but I don't think people talk about him enough just because of the Torkelson and the Green that everybody loves talking about those guys, right? And you forget about Dylan Dingler, and I think he could actually be pretty good. But no, I mean, I think one guy that like nobody knows is Drew Carlton. I think he could be really good. AJ Hinch used him a lot this spring as a guy that if there were 2 outs and, a guy, couldn't pitch his way out of the jam, he'd bring in Drew Carlton. And every time Drew Carlton was just get a quick out, 3 pitches and he's out. He doesn't throw hard. He throws like low 90s. I mean, he was like drafted in, I don't know, like the 30th round or something like that. Like, he's basically a nobody, but go back and look at Drew Carlton. And this is for everybody out there too. Like, go look up Drew Carlton on Baseball Reference and you'll see the ERA numbers. You'll see the whip. You'll see the walks. They are beyond low. It's unbelievable. Now, he doesn't throw hard. He throws like 91, 92, but he's so efficient and his command is unbelievable. And we saw this because I was interested too. I was like, okay, like, where is the command going to be in spring training when he has to face like big league guys coming in tough spots? And it was actually really good. Like, I was impressed. So went over and played in the Dominican Republic this offseason. They have a ton of guys over there that always go back and play. It was really good there. So I think he's somebody to keep an eye on as a guy that, in the not too distant future should be able to get a chance. I think he's like 25, 26 now. Zach Short is another guy that I really like. He can play all 3 infield positions. They got him in the trade with Cameron Maben, sending him to the Cubs. I think he's like I think he could be a really good utility infielder on a winning team that helps you win games.
Yeah.
So he's a guy that I think is one of those. He's not going to be a star, but he's got some sneaky pop. So yeah, I think Zach Short and Drew Carlton are 2 guys you want to look at, one on the pitching side and one on the hitting side, to kind of keep your eyes on a little bit as we get into the minor league season.
I loved your breakdown on Drew Carlton. I felt like I was talking to Jonah Hill in the bowels of the Oakland Coliseum, like talking about all the Island of Misfit toys that they were recruiting in that movie. But a great breakdown. I don't know who the fuck Drew Carlton is. So
there you go.
Yeah, so that makes him a great answer for this. So we're done with the Tigers. Your best Mount Pleasant story. You're a Chippewa. I was a Chippewa for a minute. This is putting you on the spot. It doesn't have to be even like your story. It can be something that you witnessed to, or your best friend, or you can pretend that it was your friend. You have something crazy that happened in Mount Pleasant, because I could go all night on that, but you had to have had something crazy up at CMU.
How crazy can we get on the show?
As crazy as you want. I mean, you can say fuck shit or whatever you want. I don't want to get you in trouble. But
No.
You're not gonna offend my.
I don't know. I mean, they just, I don't know. 21st birthday was a lot of fun. Did some damage at the cabin. If my Central people know where the cabin's at, that was a lot of fun. I don't know. I think one of my favorite memories, actually, I guess maybe one of like the wildest memories, was like when I was a senior in high school. So I was getting ready to go up there, and went up there for the first time and met up with, my neighbor who lived up there, and, had a lot of fun up there, and got a chance to like experience like college life for like the first time. Like, that was kind of the first time that I really got to experience it. Long story short, like, I got really lost and was like walking around and didn't really know where I was at, like trying to figure out the roads and the streets and stuff like that, because he went off to a party and I was trying to find my way. You know how that goes. So
I don't know. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah. So like that was kind of wild. I mean, I don't know. Like, a lot of it is just, funny stuff that we would do. At the apartments, we'd all hang out and, we'd all drink at the apartments and hang out and stuff like that. And then there was a basketball court that was like, in the complex that we would go to. We were staying at Tallgrass, and there was a basketball court right there. And we just,
I know Tallgrass.
We'd go and we'd play, we'd drink and go play basketball. And like, it was just like dumb stuff like that I always found enjoyable. I mean, I don't know, not too many crazy stories that I want to dive too deep into.
I don't blame you.
But it was just that kind of stuff, right? Like just getting to experience it for the first time was a blast. And then just hanging out with friends and playing, I don't know, drunk basketball. Like who does that? But it's what college kids do. Like it was fun and it's enjoyable. So.
Mount Pleasant's a great place. When I was there, 2006, it was Halloween 2006. If you went to Central or Michigan State, really any major school, like Halloween's awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was Halloween 2006. And I'm not going to remember everybody's costume, but I don't even remember what mine was, which just shows you how bad my memory is. But I do remember two of my buddies were the ambiguously gay duo from SNL. So if you're not familiar with that, it was like two gay superheroes with like really tight clothes and capes and stuff. I had a friend that was Borat. The Borat movie had just come out a couple months prior that summer. And he had like the full mustache, the briefcase, the suit, everything. I had 3 friends that went as Oompa Loompas. And that was sort of my group. So I had a Borat, the ambiguously gay duo, and 3 Oompa Loompas in my group. And there was this brawl at this party. We were at this house party, and it was them and us. And it gets to this point where my buddy, one of the 3 Oompa Loompas, is standing on top of a car outside trying to throw bottles at people. So you got an Oompa Loompa throwing clothes. You got Borat. He's got this other guy pinned down. This guy was dressed as like a unicorn or a horse or something. Was just Borat punching horse. My buddy ended up breaking his wrist. Shout out to Mike Fick. He's a big viewer of this show. I mean, he might call in and say I got some details wrong. You got the ambiguously gay duo. One is on the ground, got knocked out cold. The other guy's wailing on someone else. It was the most surreal scene. I did not throw a punch. I was actually trying to like break fights up. But just imagine 3 Oompa Loompas, 2 like skin tight clothes superheroes, like the gay duo fighting, and Borat. It was just the craziest thing. And like at Central, that was like maybe my 7th craziest story. But
dude, you had it good though, because after like right before I got there, I think it was maybe like, because I got there in 2017. 2017 was my first year there, and like I had been told that like 2014, 2015, like was a lot of fun, like welcome weekend and Halloween, like Main Street and different things like that. But I heard that like, in terms of just like the police presence and making sure that everyone was staying safe, and like they didn't want people to flood the, like that's how it was. Like
Ben's a Chippewa, so
that,
a few years older.
That's like the vibe that I got and that I picked up right away. Like I remember the first, like my welcome weekend, my freshman year, like I went up the same buddy who was my neighbor from back home, and went on to his place on Main Street, and there was like 6 police officers on every corner, just like watching what was going on.
Man.
So
it looked like Ferguson 2014.
It changed.
I swear to God,
it was.
They were throwing smoke bombs. A full line of cops covered Main Street.
It changed.
Yeah,
that was in my. I mean, I Ben's between the two of us. I was there again 15 years ago, but it was. I mean, you got the occasional person getting an MIP, but like the cops were there, but they'd like walk right by you.
Right.
When I transferred to Michigan State, everyone that had kind of partied at both schools was like, you got to keep your head more on a swivel at Michigan State. It was a great like party school, but at Central it was like, have at it, bro.
At the time, you could do anything. Yeah, at the time, you could do anything.
Pretty much. But yeah, I had some wild ones, but we won't get into the top 5. That was like my 6.
Yeah, no, me neither. I don't want to. I don't want to. Yeah.
Yeah. There thousands of people watch this show, so we don't want to get you in any trouble so early in your career. This is my hobby. This is your career. It's a difference. So let's move on. Last book you read.
Last book I read?
The last book you read. Not like when was it? Like, do you remember the last book you read? It wasn't 10 years ago, was it?
No, I don't know. The last book that I read, I think it was the Harry Potters. Actually, I reread those. Yes,
all right.
Yes, that was last spring break before like the COVID and stuff like that. I started to get into those. Went through like the first 3. I read them when I was in like middle school, and then I read them again when I was in high school, and then didn't like touch a book in college really if I didn't have to.
Yeah, just
and so then I was like, well. I know like the first like 2 or 3 Harry Potter books are pretty like, I guess I would consider them more like childish in the way that they're written and like the literature that's used. But like the ones like the later books in the series, I think like kind of turn up the tone a little bit, which I like because it's interesting to me and it's always good to just, I don't know. I found it as a good escape. I love movies too, so I'm a big movie guy, but it was more of just trying to find a way to do something different and kind of have that, escape and stuff like that to read and just kind of dive into something different. I'm not too big into reading, just so you know. Like I read The Athletic, I read the Free Press, I read, I read people's stuff like that. But in terms of books, like I've never been huge into books. It's hard
like
for
books.
me.
I like books.
You do?
Bad question by me.
No, that's a fair. That's a fair question. You got a Harry Potter answer out of a 22-year-old. That's
all right.
That's good content.
I've never read the Harry Potter books. So I'll duck under the table. Everyone digitally throws things at me. I always get like a bizarre, like look at me like I have 3 heads reaction. I just never got into them. But anyway, so you're sitting across from President Joe Biden right now. Let's pretend you get to ask. Look at that smile. This $1 million smile on that gentleman. Your one question to the president. You could ask him anything. I know mine, but this is your round, not mine.
I don't know if I can comment.
You can't comment?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I think
this will be the first pass. How many times have we done the speed round?
30 times. What kind of answers do you get?
Well, I've never asked that question, but I don't know. I get some answer.
I don't know what I would ask Joe Biden. I think I'd ask him when COVID's going to be over and see what he says.
That's fine. That's fair. It doesn't have to be a good answer, but you can't pass. Nobody.
No,
passes.
I think I would try to ask him a little bit more about some of the COVID protocols and stuff like that.
That's fair.
That's where I would go. That was the route that I would take.
Yeah.
I would probably question some of it, and I would probably ask for clarification on some of it, and I'd just be curious. I'd be curious just to know a little bit more.
That's fine.
That's where I'm at.
I would grab the nearest quarter, and I would say, heads, I ask him about Area 51. Tails, I ask him about JFK.
So you're talking about like we could get deep then and ask like real questions.
Yeah, he has access to everything. Nothing's classified from the president. You can be anything. Your answer was fine too, but I'm just saying.
But everybody would. Yeah, but that's.
I want to know. I don't know which one I would
stuff.
choose. That's why I'm bringing in the quarter because
No, JFK for sure.
JFK was killed as a result of a conspiracy, but I would want that confirmation. But I absolutely believe that. But the aliens thing would be kind of cool.
Yeah,
too.
that would be cool too.
I go back and forth on which one I would like if I were ever president or if I were like chief of staff, which will never happen. Neither of those things will happen. But like I always go back and forth which one I would ask.
Okay.
If I could only pick one.
I thought we were talking like more of just like something current that was going on
It's
that you want to know more
speed
about.
round.
No, okay,
you can
that's
ask
fair.
him what his favorite ketchup brand is. I don't care.
That's a good point.
This is an open format.
All right.
Anyway,
bring me the next one.
I'm ready for you. The best sports media personality working today. We all know it's Colin Cowherd, but if you couldn't say Colin Cowherd, who's second place?
Nobody's gonna like this, but I'm gonna do a combination between Kellerman and Stephen A. Smith.
Okay, I hate Kellerman, love Stephen A. So half credit.
All right. Well, I just like it because I think it's good TV. Like I think people. This is the thing that I think people are get upset because they just take like hot takes and just roll with it, right? But I love that stuff. Like that's interesting because as much as you might look at something that Stephen A. says and be like, no, like that makes no sense. Like why are you saying that? Or the same thing with like a Kellerman, right? You might say like, no, like why are you taking that like stance? Like there's no way you can actually think that, right? I like it because I think it's different and it provides different perspectives, and so I love that. And they're entertaining when they do it. So it's like it's good TV. For me, it's almost like a comedy, but with sports in a way. At times.
Right. It's the entire
like
format of the show too. I mean, that it's embrace debate is their whole philosophy.
But people don't like that though because people say, oh, it's all scripted and you're just taking a side and taking some outlandish stance and then throwing it at this guy. He's got to throw it back. People don't like that. I really enjoy it. I think it's a lot of fun.
I think it's fun. Skip Bayless manufactures takes. I think Stephen A. I can't speak for Kellerman. I think Stephen A. believes everything he says. I mean, he's obviously over the top. He's an entertainer. He's not just a straight man analyst. But I think he actually believes what he says. I like the debate stuff. I mean, like you happen to think Chris Ilitch is the best owner on the planet and the best owner.
I didn't go that far,
and I think has some flaws. So it's like we have the debate.
Right.
Yeah, you love him, and I have some questions about where they're going.
Right.
Anyway, moving on. Your worst sports take ever. My Twitter handle is Darko State News, is a self-imposed scarlet letter because I thought Darko Milicic would be not just good, but a Hall of Famer level. Yeah, that's why my account is Darko State News. It's like I'm such a know-it-all big mouth asshole sometimes that I have to like check myself. So I literally said I'm going to call myself like Darko for my handle, and my real name's like right above it, but my @ is Darko State News because I wanted to. It's like a remind myself that as smart as I may think I am, I think I know it all. Don't we all? I blew like one of the worst takes ever. I thought Darko would be great, and I was not alone. But I watched all those Hemo Farm tapes with like the 76,000 pixels on YouTube at the time, and I was just eating that shit up. I read the Will Robinson quote about him owning the game. The only thing that can ruin that guy is a woman. We're going to have to build a new arena. I slurped it up. Look, I've had some bad things that I've said subsequently. Nothing will ever top that, I don't think. If it does, I should probably stop talking. Everyone's got at least one thing that they just got wrong. They blew it. You say enough things, you're going to say something stupid. What's yours? Your worst sports take ever, even if you were 12 when you had it.
Oh gosh, I mean, I don't know if I can go back. I mean, I just go back to college a lot because that's kind of where the journalism career started, and that's kind of where like hot takes really started for me. Like I guess, I guess you could go back to, old Detroit teams, but at that point, I mean, I was just so young. I was just infatuated by it all. It wasn't like I was sitting there making hot takes left and right. I don't know. I mean, I guess in college, at least, and I don't know if anybody follows Central Michigan, so I'll keep it short, but like Tony Paul, they had this quarterback from Lansing that came in. He was, like supposed to be the guy or whatever. And I, kind of pegged him as like the future, is like, a guy that could be really good. And he was super tall, super big, but like they really loved him. And I like bought into it all. And like, I was all in on this Tony Poljan movement. And then obviously like Shane Morris was there, and Shane Morris came in and started the 1 year where Tony was behind him. And then I was like, oh, Tony's going to take over. Like he's going to be the guy. And like, I hyped him up pretty good because I was really high on him. I thought he was going to be solid. And then he was just terrible and ended up moving to tight end. And it was just an absolute crapshoot. And John Bonamego, who was the coach there that made that decision, got canned, and they brought Jim McElwain in, and he restructured everything. And I still, like, my buddies like will go back and like look at my old stories and send it to me and be like, dude, like you're a dumbass. Like, what were you thinking? That's
a perfectly good answer.
That's the best I got. I don't know if people know Tony Poljan or know Central Michigan football a ton.
Well, I know that, but
I missed big. Like I wrote like a big profile on him, like being the future and like all that kind of stuff. And I'll still get texts like when football season comes around from like my buddies they have a picture of like the newspaper from the one day that the story came out, and like, they took a picture of it 'cause they thought it was cool at the time, and now they just use it as freaking ammo and just come at me with it. So,
well, we have a large Michigan and Michigan State following, so allow me to translate for those two audiences. Michigan State, he's talking about Andrew Maxwell. University of Michigan, he's talking about Tate Forcier. There's your translation. So,
I thought Tate Forcier was going to be good when I was younger. I was high on him.
Well, so were they. So that's
yeah,
why he's a perfect.
That's another one too, I guess. Yeah. That I was. Yeah.
They all got that wrong, and Michigan State, I was one of them. Thought that Maxwell would be great. I mean, he's Super 8 and all that, but yeah, we all blew that one. I don't know. I mean, we all have them, and that's the point. So we'll finish here. The last one on a baseball note, but a little less depressing than anything to do with the Detroit Tigers. Believe me, this topic could not have less to do with the Detroit Tigers, no matter what we tried. Who wins the World Series in 2021? Who's the champion in a few months?
I don't like the idea of a repeat. I just don't see it happening. I understand why everyone's high on the Dodgers. I get it, right? And I totally get it. You added Trevor Bauer too. Like, you're loaded. But I'm going to take a flyer, and this is a pick that I put in the free press, so I feel like I have to kind of stand with it. I'm very back and forth on it, though, but the Chicago White Sox. I like their lineup. I like the power from their offense. I think their pitching is going to develop a lot. I really like Dallas Keuchel. I think he's really good. And I don't like Tony La Russa. I think if AJ Hinch is there, I almost lock them in to make it to the ALCS. But he's not. And so I think it's going to be a little bit more difficult. But at the same time, I think they have a lot of talent. I think they have a lot of young talent. And I think there's an opportunity there when they get hot. When that offense gets hot, like they're difficult to stop. Like it doesn't really matter who you throw at them. So that's why I got him winning the World Series. And I have to stand by that. Again, like I said, I'm very back and forth. If I was going to bet, I would not bet money on the White Sox, but I just think that they're a team that could pull it off. And so they're kind of like my sleeper pick, but also my actual pick.
Well, their talent's there. My concern would be Eloy Jimenez going out for the year. I mean, he may have been their best player this year. I mean, just superstar.
I mean, it hurts him. It hurts him.
That's like a 6 or 7 WAR player this year potentially if he had his level. And at the low end, like that's 4 or 5 wins that they lose with that. And I think he can flip a playoff game or 2. I mean, he's a stud. So it's not a bad pick.
I mean, it's my sleeper pick. Yeah. It's my big sleeper.
That's all right.
I mean, I guess I don't know, to throw something out there a little bit more like convincing. I mean, yeah, like it's easy to just say. I mean, it's easy to say Dodgers or it's easy to say Yankees because that's what everybody says, right?
Yeah.
But
I'm the asshole because I think it's the Yankees.
Yankees. You have Yankees Dodgers playing and the Yankees winning.
Yes.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
I mean, it couldn't be more.
But I think that's what anybody with like a logical, anybody that was looking at it on paper by the numbers would say, okay, yeah, like it's definitely going to be those two. So I don't knock you for that at all.
You did great today, man. That was fantastic.
No, it was fun.
I kept you a little over an hour, so you don't hate me. You're not going to go tell Tony Paul, I don't know why you didn't warn me about this motherfucker, and this guy's terrible. I'm never stepping foot in that Spartan basement again. Like, you did okay,
Dude, the
right?
setup is real down here, though. The setup is real.
I do it to impress you. Like, it was a mess before you got here, but I cleaned it up.
No, I think you need a show, though, like solely dedicated to just like
showing
because look
people
at what they're
around.
seeing. I mean, they're only getting a taste of it. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's like, again, it's all to impress you. So as long as you're happy with it and you're willing to come back,
no,
I'm good.
we have to do it again.
Okay.
We have to do it
I'd
again.
love to have you back.
100%.
Look, everyone should follow you. And look, maybe this is me being an irresponsible host, but your Twitter is literally just at your name, right?
Yeah, at Evan Petzold,
Yeah.
EvanPetzold.
Yes.
As easy as it gets.
Go there. This guy, I'm telling you, I don't like anybody. I mean, I have spent the last 3 years trying to repair all the damage I did by saying exactly what I thought of most people in this town. I'm a rehabilitated man, but this guy, even the asshole 24-year-old firebrand, hair on fire version of me would have liked you because you're old school. You stick to the facts. Here's what I'm hearing. Here's kind of both sides of the story. Here's why it might be a problem. Here's why it might be okay. And you did that here for almost an hour and a half. I think you're great at what you do. I think you're a natural. You're a surprisingly good speaker because not all good writers can do both. You did a great job today. I'm going to follow your career. I'm going to bug you about coming back because I love having you.
I'm in. I'm already in. I'm already in.
You're great, man. Keep up the great work. Everyone should go check you out.
Thank
you out in the Free Press. Just a big fan of yours, and I said that before you ever came in. So we will thank the great and powerful Oz on the other side of the curtain. Ben, great job by you, back-to-back nights. And you caught multiple typos in our prep sheet. So Ben is like my safety net. And although not literally, because if I fell on Ben, he would never be heard from again. I outweigh him by about 172 pounds. But he is my figurative safety net. Ben, great job by you as always. We got a lot coming. I mean, we did back-to-back shows this week. We're committed to at least one a week because we love you that much, but we did 2 this week. We got a couple on deck next week with Michigan State folks. I'm not going to spoil the surprise. Sorry for those of you that were expecting Jeff Moss on my show last night. It was April 1st. I can't believe that many of you people fell for it, but, call me an asshole. It is what it is. We love what we're doing. We love you. This audience continues to grow. I am grateful for that. I am grateful for my team, Dylan Smith, sitting at home doing God knows what on his iPad. I'm thankful to Eric Williamson, who does all the graphics in his underwear at home. This is a great time to be working remotely with COVID and all that. So love my team, love my guests, love our audience. We will be back next week with a lot. Evan, thanks again, man. It was great to have you.
No, thank you very much.
Spiro Avenue Show. See you next week.